Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsSTM.com. Welcome back for another Yippee For Yana episode. All supplies I'm using for this project are listed and linked in the video description below. In this video, I'm creating an autumn thank you card with the Simon Says Stamp Autumn Cascade Stencil. And you can see my test card design already stamped here, or I guess I shouldn't say stamped, I should say ink blended as it wasn't stamped. The background here was ink blended. The Autumn Cascade is a two-part layering stencil. It is beautiful and something that you'll want to add to your card right away. I'm also using the Thankful and Grateful stamp set with the coordinating dies to make the sentiment for my card. My color combo today is not the most traditional one. I'm using yellow, orange, and gray. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I mentioned, this is an easy project. It can be a one-layer card if you want by stamping the sentiment directly onto the background, or it can be a two-layer card if you want to die cut your sentiment out and pop it up with foam adhesive. That's what I did. Here I have the waffle flower grip mat. This is the 8 by 8 inches grip mat, and I'm going to use it as a base for my stenciling. I have a sheet of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. This is cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I've placed the paper onto the grip mat. The paper is now going to stick to the mat and stay in place. I don't need to tape anything down. These grip mats from Waffle Flower are incredible. They come in several sizes and they are very, very handy for crafting. I have one in my Misty and I'm also using this large one for stenciling. I'm going to place the first layer of my stencil onto my cardstock panel. As you can see, the leaves here are all placed in a curve or in an arch. I'm going to ink blend this design twice to have an almost full background for my card. So I'll have a leafy arch at the top of my panel and then another leafy arch at the bottom of my panel, and they will form almost a circular leaf frame on my card, if you will. So the stencil grips onto the grip mat, and now the grip mat is holding both the paper and the stencil, and I don't need to tape anything down or to hold anything down with my fingers. If you do not have the grip mat, you can of course still use the stencil. You can still do the stenciling the old-fashioned way. You'll just need to tape your paper and your stencil down, or maybe hold it down with magnets or your fingers. Now, my idea is to ink blend each leaf using a different color of ink. And here I'm just using 3 colors, citrine, mandarin, and earl. And these are the Simon Says Stamp positively saturated inks. I have a blending brush for each color, and I'm going to rotate through these 3 colors to ink blend the leaves. Now, I'm not masking the leaves. I'm not going for ink blended perfection and absolutely clear, solid ink colors on each leaf. I do try my best to not mix different ink colors on one leaf, but if I get a little bit of the wrong color ink on another leaf, that's okay. I don't worry about it. I just try to do my best to avoid that. And I sometimes use my finger to stop the blending brush from going where it is not supposed to, or I use my finger to mask the leaf. But I'm certainly not masking, I'm not using masking paper to mask each leaf as I do my ink blending. You can do that if you want. I actually tried doing that and I have found that it is a little bit too tedious. It takes a little bit too long, and I just prefer to do my stenciling a little bit differently. Now, the gray color is probably somewhat unexpected here. It does look odd, but in the end, this color combination works beautifully. Now, there is one very detailed leaf, and the stencil sections in that leaf are very, very fine. So I have found that I needed to hold them down with my finger because they tend to move a lot. And I have ink blended one of those leaves completely incorrectly because the sections moved. So here, I'm also using tape to hold those stencil pieces in place while I ink blend. I also just pounce over those detailed areas as I find that really helps to keep those stencil areas in place when it comes to this particular leaf. So I continue to ink blend the leaves, switching between my different ink colors until I have the first half of this background done. Next, I remove the stencil from my grip mat. I rotate the grip mat. I'm not even removing the paper from the grip mat. I just rotate the grip mat, and I now have the other part of the panel to ink blend. I'm positioning the stencil so that I can continue the leaf movement, if you will, so that I can continue that on my panel. Now, I do have a little bit of a gap in the top right corner over there, and I have masked that with some tape so that I don't accidentally get any ink over there. But I will come back to that section later, and I will add an additional leaf so it's not going to look empty and odd. Now I'm repeating the ink blending here, and I'm using the same ink colors, and I'm even trying to use the same colors of ink for the same leaves. So I'm practically trying to mirror the design that I just ink blended. I'm ink blending with the Simon Says Stamp small blending brushes. Now the detail blending brushes would be handy here as well, especially when you ink blend some of those smaller berries or the smaller leaves. I don't know why I didn't think to use the detail brushes when I was ink blending this. I know I was just so in the zone. I was so fascinated with this ink blending. I think I completely forgot about anything else, and I just blended away. With the blending done, I removed the stencil and I positioned it to ink blend that empty corner, and once again, I ink blended another leaf there. So there is a second layer to this stencil, and that adds detail and veins to the leaves and to your berries as well. I picked just one ink color for the detail layer. It is a dark gray. This is a charcoal ink, also Simon Says Stamp positively saturated ink. And I also switched to a different gray blending brush to ink blend this second layer. Now the second layer blending goes a lot quicker here, and as I'm just adding one ink color, I'm not constantly switching between different colors. I'm not worried about getting the wrong color in the wrong spot. I'm just adding gray. Now this dark gray works really well with the yellow and orange, and of course with the lighter gray. Yellow and gray usually make a great color combination, and adding orange here easily turned the typical yellow and gray color combination into a perfect fall combination. So here's a look at my background once it is blended. I love the leaves. I love the movement, and I also love the open area in the center where I can house my sentiment. Now, speaking of the sentiment, I stamped the word thankful using orange ink, and I cut it out using the coordinating die. Here, I have already added foam adhesive squares from the back of this die cut. It isn't adhered yet, and I'm just using it to figure out the placement for the rest of my stamping. I want the card to say, "I'm so thankful you are in my life." I'm first stamping the "you are in my life" part, and I had to cut this sentiment into two parts to have one part go before the letter F and the other part go after the letter F of the word thankful. Instead of using black ink, which is the color that I typically use, I stamped the sentiment in the same dark gray, the charcoal color, and I love it. It's just different, it looks fresh, it looks modern, love it. I adhered this panel to an A2 card base, and you can see that I have other panel adhering to a card base as well, and I have magnets pressing down on the paper while the glue is drying. Lastly, I used a white jelly roll pen, and I added some white dots onto each of the berries to create a teeny tiny highlight, and I also added some aura sequins from Spellbinders to hide some of the ink smudges that I ended up having on my cards. I just could not avoid having ink smudges. No matter what I did, I always had at least one. So here's the look at the cards I have for you today. Thanks so much for spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed this idea. If you make a card inspired by this video, we'd love it if you shared your project online and tagged us on social media. We always love seeing what you make. Thanks so much for joining me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.